When first starting a story, I look for 3 things to figure out if it'll be interesting. Good action scenes, because I'm an immature person who likes to watch characters beat the shit out of each other. A well done romance, because I'm a sucker for a good love story. And comedy, because who doesn't like to laugh? The story I'm reviewing today has none of these things in large quantities, but surprisingly, I wouldn't say it's boring. Frustrating as hell perhaps, and confusing at times, but amazingly, not boring. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present xxxHolic. Holic is set in modern-day Japan and follows Watanuki, an orphaned high school student who can see spirits. Unfortunately for our dear protagonist, his blood smells good and attracts spirits, but he has no real exorcism powers. As a result, he has plenty of spirits chasing him, and no real way to deal with them. One day, Watanuki comes across and then is very literally dragged into a mysterious wish-granting shop being run by the witch Yuko. After preventing him from leaving, and forcing him to make a wish, she makes him an indentured servant to pay for his wish. The rest of the story consists of Watanuki doing odd jobs for Yuko, and complaining all the way. Watanuki is not one of the more likable characters Clamp has ever written. He's very kind, conscientious, and a hard worker, but is also just a bit of an idiot. He has a tendency to fly off the handle in rage for pretty trivial things, and then whines way too much about it. His master, Yuko, is much better. She is a study in contrast, both wise and mysterious, as well as self-centered and mischievous. While she does have magic powers, her methods for granting wishes are often more mundane and humorous. You want to solve your addiction to the computer? Well, let me take this baseball bat and... problem solved. She pretty much is the reason I kept reading this story at the start. Along with her, our other important female character is Himawari, who, to be frank, smiles a lot, disappoints Watanuki's love, and does very little else. She does develop into a bit of a more interesting character later in the series, but for the first part, she's essentially just an annoying ditz. Lastly, among the important characters who show up early in the story is Demeki. Actually, I guess there's also Monica, but I'm not particularly concerned with cute puffballs. Anyways, Demeki is pretty much the epitome of the strong and silent type. Because of fate, he keeps on getting thrown together with Watanuki, and they seem to do a good job of getting on each other's nerves. Despite this, they also seem to have a grudging respect for each other. They're pretty much the perfect target material for a yaoi fanfic. There are 2 main reasons I actually kept reading this story. The first being Yuko's awesomeness, and the second is the character development of our protagonist. As the story progresses, Watanuki starts to become more and more like Yuko, and by the end of the story, he's actually a character I can respect. Also, the story consists of a bunch of mini-stories for each job or supernatural event that Watanuki becomes involved in. And while the overarching plot has a few issues, each of these mini-stories tend to be interesting enough in their own right, and are fun to read. Lastly, one other major thing that the story has going for it is its artwork. As is custom for anything Clamp, the drawings have a huge amount of detail, and the character designs look pretty darn good. Though admittedly, some people may be turned off by the fact that every single character seems to be thinner than your average Barbie doll. So probably the easiest thing to pick apart this story for is that it can be bloody confusing. Some parts I think were made intentionally so, but others I think are just poor explanations given by the authors. As I was reading this story, I'd get to points where I had no clue what was going on. Stop, try to puzzle it out, give up, hope it would make sense later, read further, and still find it made heck all sense. Honestly, I'm just treating some of the events of the story as little deus ex machinas. Now, I'm sure some people are going to say, oh well, you haven't read Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles, and if you had read that, everything would be clear. To which I would say, first, that you shouldn't have to read another series to understand what's going on in the current one, and secondly, I did actually read Tsubasa before I read this, and I can't say it helped noticeably. My next complaint is with the ending, because very simply, this story's ending didn't really wrap anything up. It was the type of thing where I finished the last chapter and then immediately searched for the next one, because I thought there was no way it could actually be the end of the series. To be fair, Clamp is currently releasing a sequel series, but on its own, Holic does not have a satisfying ending. My last complaint is with the amount of time that was actually spent moving the main plot forwards versus the amount of time that was spent on random side plots that make up the bulk of the story. As entertaining as each of the little jobs Watanuki did were, I don't think it would have hurt to remove a couple of them, and then maybe actually give a bit more information on Yuko's backstory, or actually spend some time tying up some loose plot threads. In conclusion, I think I got about as much from Holic as is possible for a confusing story without fighting, comedy, romance, and an ending. And yeah, that sentence pretty much fits the definition of damning with faint praise pretty perfectly. But honestly, how much you enjoy it depends on whether you're looking for something exciting or more going for the whole thought-provoking idea. For scores, where 0 is terrible, 5 is average, and 10 is amazing, I give Holic a 7 out of 10 for plot, 7 out of 10 for characters, 8 out of 10 for quality of writing, and 5 out of 10 for my own personal enjoyment, giving it an overall score of 6.75 out of 10. Anyways, if you've already read Holic and are looking for something else to read, I would recommend Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles, Holic's sister series, which takes place in the same universe, has a number of direct tie-ins, and in my opinion is much better. Anyways, thanks for listening. Cheers!